Hey everyone, I'm Ian. Let's talk about Mega Man X. It's like Mega Man, only edgy. A spin-off of the classic Mega Man series, the X series got started in 1993, acting as Mega Man's jump from the NES to the Super NES, and evolved into its own successful side series, being set in the future of the same universe as the original Mega Man games, but with completely different casts of characters and some distinctly different mechanics, all while still operating within the same basic structure of the classic series. It's really cool. And as a bit of a follow-up to last year's video where I looked at the classic series in order from worst to best in my opinion, we're going to be doing the same thing with the X series, looking at all 8 main installments from my least favorite to my favorite. Now, that does come with the same caveats that the last video came with, namely, we're only looking at the main series games. We're not going to be looking at any spin-offs or remakes, so sorry Mega Man Extreme or Maverick Hunter X or Command Mission, they just don't fit in with the list, so it's just going to be the main 8 entries. With that out of the way, let's get started. At the bottom spot, we've got Mega Man X6. When I looked at the classic series games last year, I made a point to say that even the bottom ranking entries were still very, very good games overall. That isn't the case here at all. This game sucks. Rather than have any kind of intelligent and satisfying level design, this game just throws a shitload of enemies and weird level gimmicks at you and expects you to just make do with it. Like, look at all these nightmare enemies. What the fuck am I supposed to do? The use of stage gimmicks is especially annoying since they don't really mask the bad design of the levels at all, and instead just sort of make things even more irritating, and that's before mentioning the Reploids you have to rescue, since if you screw up the wrong ones, the game can be almost incompletable, in addition to the nightmare system, which adds yet more stupid gimmicks to levels, ranging from annoying to downright game-breaking. They didn't even bother to remove the Japanese voice acting in the US release. That's how lazy this game is from start to finish. To say some positive things though, the soundtrack is awesome, easily the best of any of the post-Super Nintendo Mega Man X games, plus Shield Sheldon is in it. I just like his name, that's all. This game is properly infuriating to play and is the only one I didn't even bother to finish for this video. It's just that bad. Number 7. Mega Man X7 is probably most people's least favorite installment in the X series, and trust me, I totally get why. But unlike Mega Man X6, which is downright infuriating to play most of the time, this game is more just incredibly, mind-bogglingly boring. When I say boring, though, I don't mean, oh, this game is so dull. I mean, this game is literally physically exhausting to play. The gameplay is slow, the story is slow, even the fucking menu navigation is slow. When the gameplay is so incredibly slowly placed, it's really hard to keep the player engaged, and the fact that there's practically no strategy or skill required here doesn't help much either. There are 3 playable characters here, X, Zero, and Axel, but you don't actually unlock X until like halfway through the game, so regardless, the game lets you pick 2 characters, and then you can take them into level. This allows you to switch between the 2 on the fly, which should be awesome, but here's the thing. X and Axel are both ranged characters, but due to the game's transition to the 3D, there's a lock-on for your gun. Okay, cool, but it's automatic, so you just gotta mash fire, and the game handles all the aiming for you. That means the game amounts to a lot of this. Thrilling. Zero is actually worse, since his frantic, fast-paced swordplay translates into slow, imprecise swings that have no sense of flow or impact. Due to the fact that the game basically handles combat for you, everything's incredibly easy, at least until the camera decides to completely screw you over. At times, the perspective is so incredibly messed up that there is no way to effectively navigate. That being said, I still think the game had potential. Once you unlock X and can completely drop Axel, there are glimmers of a decent 3D X game here. They never actually fully work out, granted, but dashing around open areas, fighting enemies using ride armors, climbing up walls to find stuff all in 3D, it's pretty cool when the game does a halfway decent job at it. Too bad that's only in one level, which also happens to be really boring and easy, so yeah, no, the game sucks, but hey, things definitely start to shoot uphill from here, starting with Number 6. Mega Man X3 is kind of a weird one on this list in the sense that it is technically fine, but it's incredibly unremarkable, like remarkably unremarkable. Being the last of the X games released on the Super NES, X3 had a nice backbone to build off of. It looks nice, it controls pretty much perfectly, and in theory, it should be a good game, but it just kind of isn't? On a structural level, I think it's the weakest of the Super Nintendo entries by far. The amount of backtracking required to get everything is unreal, since you have to unlock the ride armors in this game rather than just have them be available in stages. Wouldn't be too bad if the game didn't lock, like, most of the upgrades behind the ride armors, meaning that chances are you'll play through most, if not all, of the main Maverick stages prior to even beginning to truly upgrade X, which is lame since that's kind of a major draw of the X series. The Mavericks themselves are kinda neat, and the bosses in general I found to be pretty fun, but the process of getting to them, well, that's where it gets a little more interesting. When this game first starts out, X takes way too much damage from everything he comes into contact with. I get why they upped the difficulty a little bit. X1 and X2 are both very easy games overall, but the thing is, this isn't really challenging, it's just punishing, and trust me, there's a big difference. Once you upgrade X a bit, the game becomes just as easy as the first two, other than the final boss with Sigma, which is just stupid because you have to hit his head and it's so fucking small. Aside from the higher difficulty though, this game is just sort of X2 again, which in theory is fine. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, but it's just not as fun as the games that came before, which is a shame. I guess it's cool that you can play as Zero, but I barely did that at all, since once he dies, you lose him, and that's really lame. It's also worth noting that there are two versions of Mega Man X3, and I recorded both for this video. Primarily what you're seeing is the Super Nintendo version, but there was also a 32-bit version for consoles like the PS1 and the Saturn. Technically, this is actually the GameCube version, but whatever. It's the same as the SNES version, but the music is better. It's really grating on the SNES version, but here it's more, I don't know, mellow, I guess? It doesn't actually fit the game, but I like how it sounds, so it works out. The animated cutscenes are pretty cool too, but otherwise it's the same game and it's mediocre. Shame.
Number 5.
Speaking of mediocre, Mega Man X5 suffers from a lot of the same problems as X3. Namely that it's basically just too much like its predecessor without really doing anything new and innovative. Instead, it just kind of focuses on gimmicks. Off the bat, I will say this game introduces the ability to switch between X and Zero between levels and share the adventure, which is awesome. It also allows X and Zero to duck, which frankly is stunning. Add on to that the addition of classic series elements to tie the franchise as a whole together, and yeah, this game is neat. But not quite neat enough to rank it any higher on this list. I do have a lot of problems with this game. For starters, it's got this Majora's Mask-ass time limit that ultimately affects nothing, since the time granted is so long that you'll never unintentionally run out. It wants to create tension, but it fails. The objective of the game is basically to stop a space station from crashing into Earth, and by killing the Mavericks, you build your defense. Okay, neat. But it's down to RNG in terms of if you actually succeed in stopping it or not. I had to reload during my playthrough to get the ending I wanted, which is stupid. This mechanic also effectively segments the game, because there are 2 attempts made to stop the station, both requiring the defeat of 4 Mavericks to maximize your likelihood of it working, with the weakness order reflecting this in its design. The game is in 2 distinct halves, and to me, that's just not a great thing for the X series. I also absolutely hate the armor upgrade system at play here. There are 2 sets of armor for X to unlock in this game, which should be really cool, but it means you can only use armors once they are fully completed, instead of X upgrading as you go like in the previous games. I do like the addition of the ultimate armor in regular gameplay though, and do have fun with some of the levels. I stress some of the levels. Most of them are just kind of boring, and I can't help but notice that the truck level is eerily similar to the awesome train level in X4, and the staircase level, it's basically the same as X4 as well. Noticing a pattern here? Regardless, this game is fine, and in earlier English releases had Duff McWhalen, so that's a plus.
Number 4.
Mega Man X2 is fucking awesome. I just wanted to get that out of the way. This game is absolutely incredible and is miles better than any of the previous games on this list. Thing is, I really don't have a ton to say about it. I like the fact that the dash was made into a main part of X moveset here. I love the air dash and the arm cannon upgrade. I really dig the wireframe effects, and in general, I just kinda like most of what this game does. The addition of the X Hunters might be the only thing I'm not super into in this game. These 3 fuckers show up early in the game and invade the levels, offering optional mini-bosses. Except they aren't actually optional if you want the best ending and if you want to skip a very annoying boss later in the game. And since where they show up is randomized, it can disrupt the level order and make you play the game in a way that you might not want to. I get trying to force the player out of their comfort zone, but given the semi-non-linear nature of Mega Man, that should be left up to the player and not forced upon them. I don't like that mechanic at all. Honestly though, that's kind of my only major criticism here. This is one of my favorite games for the Super Nintendo. It is kind of expensive. I wouldn't really recommend picking up an original copy unless you're already a collector. But this game is available to play in a lot of ways, and you absolutely should. It is great.
Number 3.
God damn, Mega Man X8 is a total 180 from the games that preceded. X6 and X7 are some of the worst I've ever played, but X8? It's fun. Yeah, no, that's basically Mega Man X8 in a nutshell. It's really fun. It kind of reminds me of Mega Man 8, where every level does something different. 1 minute you're in an auto-scroller, the next you're on a ride chaser, the next you're in a literal obstacle course, where you are graded on each challenge and rewarded appropriately. It's a lot of fun. The only level I really don't like is Gigavolt Mana Wars, since if you don't know what you're doing, it is crazy frustrating, and if you do know what you're doing, it takes under a minute. That is bad design, obviously, but it's one stage out of the whole game. The 3 playable characters carried over from X7 all feel so great to play as. Honestly, the control here is about as close to perfect as it gets in 2.5D. I mostly use X and Zero, who play and act exactly as they always do, but Axel is actually really cool here, having multi-directional aiming like Bass from the classic series, which is really helpful sometimes. It feels like Capcom really took the too slow criticism of X7 to heart here. They even scattered collectibles everywhere just to keep you moving along. Add to that the quality of life improvements made, and you've got yourself one of the best games for the PS2 and one of the best Mega Man games. It is a gem.
Number 2.
Mega Man X4 is a perfect example of playing it safe, done right. This game basically takes everything that works in X1 and X2 and runs with it, mostly just continuing what those entries did right, but executing it basically flawlessly. Now, that's not to say that this game didn't bring anything new to the table. Zero's here now. Granted, he was playable in X3 as well, but this was the game that introduced his up-close and personal fighting style that he is oh so very famous for in the series, and it's the first time that he was a full playable character and integral part of the game. But overall, in terms of actual structure and mechanics, this game is basically just X1 and X2 again. Now, some of the other games suffered from being too similar to their predecessors, but in this game's case, it's one of the greatest strengths it has. It took what works, and it runs with it, doing an awesome job jumping from 16-bit to 32-bit. Especially on the visual front, this game is absolutely gorgeous, easily the best-looking Mega Man game in my opinion, no doubt. I love the fluidity of the animation here, and unlike in some of the later PS1 era games, X and Zero never look out of place in these environments. It's so incredibly organic. The music isn't quite as good as in some of the games before or after though, and the sound design is a little weird. I mean, the voice acting in general is bad, but sort of like in my previous Mega Man list, I'm kinda into it, like, mostly for this one scene, you know the one. It's a very relaxed game, I guess you could say, although getting the heart tank and sub-tank and the bike level is a total chore. Other than that though, this game never really annoys me, which is definitely a plus. X4 pretty much does exactly what it needs to continue to expand the formula set in X1 and X2 in an incremental way, granted, but it does it well enough to deliver one of the finest 2D platforming experiences you can find on the PS1 or in general. It is stellar. But not as stellar as...
Number 1.
Okay, maybe I'm biased a little bit due to nostalgia here, but Mega Man X is not only the best Mega Man X game, not only the best Mega Man game, but in my opinion, it is the best video game for the Super Nintendo and my personal favorite game of all time. The jump from the NES Mega Man games to this game is absolutely massive. Every element of those games was taken and kicked to 11 here, which I guess could be said about the other games as well, but none of them have ever come close to this game in terms of sheer quality and polish. Every single element here feels intentional. The control here is perfect. The enemies are placed exactly where they feel most natural. The weapons are all useful, which is not a common trend in the X series, and the sheer polish on display here is just unreal. But in terms of the moment-to-moment gameplay, it is technically the same as that of its sequel, so what sets X1 apart exactly? Well, honestly, kind of everything. The way X handles in this game is the same as ever, but the levels feel so much more perfectly tuned to his gameplay. The way that you can get everything with almost no backtracking if you know what you're doing is awesome for repeat playthroughs. The way that these levels are altered depending on what order you play them in is super cool too. A few of the other games tried to imitate this to an extent, but none of them pull it off as well or as organically as X1. The presentation is also on point too. The music just kicks so much ass, it honestly boggles my mind. The game looks absolutely awesome too, with a very clean art style that complements the high-speed antics on display perfectly. Honestly, I don't have any complaints with this game. I'm sorry, but I have none. It's perfect, at least to me, and I know I'll be playing this game for years and years to come. But hey, that's the X series, ranked poorly by me. What are your thoughts on the X series? Any major disagreements on my rankings, or anything you think I just missed out on, or you just want to throw in your 2 cents? Hey, let me know in the comments below. I love talking about Mega Man, so I'm all for that shit. You can also, of course, like the video and share it. It really does help out a ton, and if you want to see more from me, subscribing is the best way to do so. You can also join my Discord server. The link is in the description below if you want to throw any ideas at me or see me rant very lamely about Sonic the Hedgehog lore. It's kind of sad. But hey, that is all for now. I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye. I said that very forcefully. Bye-bye. Nice.